Welcome to Mint Vault USA. Today, we're looking at 4 Kennedy half dollars that may seem ordinary at first, but certain rare examples can attract serious collector attention and strong prices. You'll discover the history behind these coins, the design details that matter, the mint marks collectors watch, and the errors or varieties that can make one half dollar stand out from the rest. Stay with me, because the final coin has the strongest value story in today's lineup. Now let's start with the first coin. The first coin in today's lineup takes us back to 1965, and this is where the Kennedy half dollar story starts to change in a very important way. The 1965 Kennedy half dollar with no mint mark may look like a simple circulated coin today, but it came from a year when the United States Mint changed the metal used in the series. After the first Kennedy half dollars were released in 1964 with 90% silver, the composition was reduced in 1965 to 40% silver and 60% copper, giving this coin an important place in the history of the series. PCGS records a mintage of 65,879,366, with the coin weighing about 11.5 grams and measuring roughly 30.61 millimeters across. That historical change matters because millions of Americans were still deeply connected to the Kennedy design. President John F. Kennedy had been assassinated less than 2 years earlier, and the half dollar carrying his portrait had quickly become more than just money. Many people saved these coins because of the emotional connection, while others continued spending them in everyday life. A circulated 1965 example like the one we are looking at today may have passed through grocery stores, banks, restaurants, and family collections for decades before finally being noticed again. The design is simple but powerful. On the front, Kennedy faces left, with Liberty surrounding his portrait and the date 1965 below. The portrait was created by Gilroy Roberts. On the reverse, the presidential seal-inspired design by Frank Gasparo shows an eagle holding an olive branch and arrows, surrounded by stars and strong national symbols. Even on a circulated coin, those details give the Kennedy half dollar a very different feel from most everyday US coins. Now pay attention to the missing mint mark, because this is where beginners can easily become confused. A normal 1965 Kennedy half dollar does not need a mint mark to be genuine or collectible. During this period, mint marks were removed from circulating US coins, so the lack of a letter is expected. The missing mint mark by itself is not an error. Instead, collectors look for something more meaningful, such as a genuine doubled die, an unusual strike, a planchet problem, or another feature created during production. This particular coin is circulated, so some wear is completely normal. Kennedy's cheek and hair are usually among the areas where wear becomes noticeable first, while small contact marks can appear across the open fields. The eagle on the reverse may also lose some of its sharper detail after years of handling. That does not automatically make the coin uninteresting, because circulation wear and true mint errors are two completely different things. A scratch added years later is damage, but a real double die feature or another production error was created before the coin ever left the mint. Collectors also pay attention to the 1965 double die reverse variety, which PCGS lists as one of the recognized die varieties for this date. This is the kind of detail that should be compared carefully with genuine reference examples rather than judged from a blurry photograph. And this is where the value begins to get exciting. High-grade regular strike 1965 Kennedy half dollars can bring serious money when preservation becomes exceptional. PCGS records an auction result of $11,400 for an MS-67 Plus example sold in July 2025, while a 1965 special mint set example has an older PCGS auction record of $12,650. Those are exceptional certified coins, not ordinary circulated pieces, but they show how far collector demand can rise when rarity, grade, and eye appeal come together. That number becomes even more interesting when you remember that this coin started life as 50 cents. A half dollar that once passed through ordinary transactions can, in the right certified condition, or with an important variety, reach a five-figure price. That is exactly why experienced collectors slow down when they see an older Kennedy half-dollar. They do not assume every coin is valuable, but they also do not dismiss it before checking the details. If you find one that looks unusual, do not clean it. Polishing or scrubbing can leave permanent marks and reduce collector interest. Hold it by the edge, place it in a proper coin holder, and compare the suspicious feature with trusted references. For an important variety or unusually high-grade coin, professional grading through PCGS or NGC can help confirm exactly what you own. If the coin turns out to be special, selling it carefully matters too. A normal circulated example may be easy to sell through a local dealer, but a certified high-grade coin or recognized variety may attract stronger interest through a major numismatic auction where experienced Kennedy half-dollar collectors can compete for it. The 1965 Kennedy half-dollar shows why this series remains so popular. It combines silver, history, an emotional connection to President Kennedy, and the possibility of rare varieties or exceptional condition. Most circulated examples have lived ordinary lives, but every once in a while, one survives with the exact qualities serious collectors want. And that is when a 50-cent coin can become something much more exciting. Now, let's move on to the next coin. This next coin takes us into 1967, but its story is very different from the first coin because by this point, the Kennedy half-dollar had already become something unusual in American life. Millions had been made, many had been saved, and the half-dollar itself was slowly becoming less common in everyday transactions. The 1967 Kennedy half-dollar with no mint mark may look simple when you first pick it up, especially when the coin has circulated and shows scratches across Kennedy's cheek with darker toning around the rim, but this date has several details that can make collectors stop, turn the coin under the light, and look much more carefully. To understand why, picture America in 1967. The Kennedy half-dollar had been introduced only a few years earlier, following the death of President John F. Kennedy. People had formed a strong emotional connection with the design almost immediately. Many families saved the coins instead of spending them because Kennedy's portrait carried memories of a president whose death was still fresh in the minds of millions of Americans. At the same time, the United States was dealing with major changes in its coinage system, and the silver content of the half-dollar had already been reduced from the 90% silver used in 1964 to the 40% silver composition used from 1965 through 1970. That meant the 1967 half-dollar still contained real silver, but much less than the original Kennedy half-dollar. That silver content is one reason these coins still feel different when you hold them. A 1967 Kennedy half-dollar weighs about 11.5 grams, making it larger and heavier than most coins people carry today. The outer layers contain silver and copper, while the center also contains a silver-copper mixture. It is not a solid silver coin, but enough silver remains in the composition to give collectors another reason to save these pieces, instead of treating them like ordinary modern change. Now look at the front of the coin. Kennedy faces left, and the portrait fills much of the surface. Liberty curves around the upper part of the design. In God We Trust appears below the portrait, and the date 1967 sits at the bottom. The portrait was designed by Gilroy Roberts, and its large size means Kennedy's cheek becomes one of the first places where marks and scratches are easy to notice. That matters for the example we are discussing today, because this coin shows obverse cheek scratches from circulation. Those scratches tell us something important, but not necessarily something exciting. A scratch on Kennedy's cheek usually happened after the coin left the mint. It could have come from another coin, a cash drawer, a counting machine, or years spent rubbing against other metal objects. That kind of mark is considered circulation damage, not a mint error. This difference is one of the most important things a new collector can learn, because a strange-looking mark does not automatically make a coin rare. Turn the coin over, and the design becomes much more detailed. Frank Gasparo created the reverse, which was based on the presidential seal. An eagle fills the center, holding arrows in one claw and an olive branch in the other, while a ring of stars and other small details surround the design. Even on a circulated coin, the reverse can be impressive because there is so much happening in a relatively small space. When collectors study Kennedy half dollars for varieties, those small details can become very important. Now consider the rim of this particular coin. Darker tunning has developed around the edge, creating a different color from the center of the surface. Tunning can form naturally as the metal reacts slowly with air, storage materials, humidity, and other parts of the environment. Sometimes tunning appears light gold or gray, while other coins develop deeper brown, blue, or almost black shades. The color alone does not make the coin rare, but natural tunning can sometimes add personality and eye appeal if collectors find the pattern attractive. This is also where people make one of the biggest mistakes in coin collecting. They see dark tunning and immediately want to remove it. They reach for polish, baking soda, chemicals, or a rough cloth because they believe a shiny coin will be worth more. With collectible coins, that can do exactly the opposite. Cleaning can remove original metal from the surface, leave fine scratches, and create an unnatural shine that experienced collectors recognize very quickly. So if you find a 1967 Kennedy half dollar with dark rim tunning, do not try to make it brighter. Let the surface remain as it is. Hold the coin around the edge instead of placing your fingers across Kennedy's face, and keep it inside a clean coin-safe holder. The darker edge may simply be part of the coin's 50-plus-year journey, and once that original surface is altered, there is no way to bring it back. Now let us talk about the missing mint mark, because this is one of the details that causes the most confusion. A 1967 Kennedy half dollar normally has no mint mark. During the period from 1965 through 1967, the United States temporarily removed mint marks from circulating coinage as part of the government's response to the national coin shortage. NGC notes that the circulating Kennedy half dollars dated 1965, 1966, and 1967 were produced at Denver, even though the coins carried no mint mark. That means the missing letter is not the rare feature by itself. This is important because you may see online listings claiming that a 1967 Kennedy half dollar no mint mark is a major error. That description may sound exciting, but the missing mint mark is normal for the year. The real collector search begins when you move beyond that basic detail and start studying how the coin was actually struck. And this is where 1967 becomes much more interesting. Collectors know several recognized double-die varieties for this year. NGC lists multiple double-die obverse varieties, including FS1, 2, and FS1, 3, as well as a recognized double-die reverse variety, FS801. NGC also notes that several strong double-die obverse varieties are known for regular 1967 Kennedy half dollars. Now imagine examining the coin under magnification. Instead of focusing on the cheek scratches, you begin studying the lettering and design carefully. On a real double die, part of the design may show a second impression-like separation because the working die itself carried doubling. That is very different from a random scratch or flattened metal caused by circulation. The difference can be small, which is why collectors compare suspicious coins with photographs of known varieties rather than relying only on what they think they see. Certain 1967 special mint set coins are even known for a dramatic variety where doubling appears strongly around Kennedy's hair. NGC describes one popular SMS variety as a quadrupled obverse die, with the effect especially visible in the hair. Those special mint set pieces are a separate category from the normal circulated coin we are discussing, but they show just how interesting this year can become when serious variety collectors start looking closely. Other errors can also attract attention. A Kennedy half dollar might be struck off center, leaving part of the design missing, while another area shows extra blank planchet. A clipped planchet can leave a curved section missing from the edge if the metal blank was cut incorrectly before striking. A struck-through error can happen when grease, debris, or another object comes between the die and the coin during production, leaving part of the design weak or strangely shaped. But here is the part beginners need to remember. Not every strange-looking coin is an error. A damaged rim might come from being dropped. A strange flat area may come from heavy circulation. Scratches around Kennedy's face can simply be contact damage. Dark color can come from storage. A true mint error has characteristics that show the unusual feature happened during production, and professional collectors spend years learning how to tell that difference. That is why this particular circulated 1967 coin becomes an excellent learning piece. The cheek scratches are visible, and the rim tunning is easy to notice, but neither one automatically creates rare value. Instead, they teach you where circulation has changed the coin, helping you separate normal wear from something that may have happened before the $half ever left the mint. There is another part of the 1967 story that makes collectors interested: mintage. The mint produced a very large number of Kennedy $half for this date because 1967 was the first year since 1964 when production was focused entirely on coins bearing the current year. NGC explains that the coin shortage had eased by then, and this contributed to the large output of 1967 dated $half. Because so many were produced, ordinary examples are not rare simply because of the date. But large mintage numbers can create an interesting collector situation. When millions of coins exist, most are easy to find in normal condition. The challenge becomes finding the exceptional coin, the one with an important variety, unusually strong strike, beautiful original surfaces, or an extremely high certified grade. That is when competition can begin. Think about two 1967 Kennedy $half sitting side by side. One has obvious wear, cheek scratches, and weak details from decades of circulation. The other was carefully stored from the beginning, still carries strong mint luster, has very few marks, and receives an unusually high grade from a professional grading service. They share the same date and design, but collectors may view them completely differently. NGC's current guide illustrates just how dramatic that difference can become. Its July 2026 pricing information places ordinary circulated 1967 Kennedy $half in a much lower category, while exceptionally preserved uncirculated examples can reach as much as $5,250 at the highest levels shown in its guide. That is the value number to remember for this story. $5,250 for an exceptional high-end example, not because every 1967 $half is secretly worth thousands, but because condition can become extremely important once collectors reach the finest surviving pieces. Now add a recognized double-die variety into the discussion, and the story becomes even more interesting. Variety collectors are not simply buying a Kennedy $half. They are trying to find a specific die that produced a specific characteristic. That turns the search into something much more focused, because the collector may need only one exact variety to complete a specialized set. Imagine having searched for months, checking coin shows, online auctions, dealer inventories, and old collections. Then one day, a properly authenticated 1967 double die appears. The coin has attractive surfaces, strong detail, and the exact variety you have been waiting to find. At that point, the face value of 50 cents has almost nothing to do with the decision anymore. The coin has become a collectible object with its own rarity, story, and demand. That emotional part of collecting is easy to forget when people talk only about money. Many collectors are not chasing coins simply because they expect prices to rise. They enjoy the hunt. They enjoy learning why one piece differs from another. They enjoy holding something made almost 60 years ago and imagining the places it may have traveled before reaching their collection. A circulated 1967 Kennedy $half makes that feeling especially strong because it was actually used. It may have passed through a bank teller's hands during the late 1960s, sat in a cash register during the 1970s, been stored in a family jar through the 1980s, and then disappeared into a drawer until someone rediscovered it years later. The cheek scratches and rim tunning become evidence of that journey rather than just imperfections. Of course, if you discover a 1967 $half and believe it has a rare feature, excitement should not make you rush. The safest first step is to slow down and examine the coin carefully. Use good lighting and, if possible, a simple magnifier. Compare suspicious doubling with genuine reference photographs. Look at the entire coin rather than focusing on a single strange mark. If something still looks promising, protect the coin. A simple non-PVC holder can prevent new scratches while you continue your research. Avoid touching the flat surfaces, especially the open areas around Kennedy's portrait where fingerprints can leave permanent marks over time. And again, do not clean it. Even when the rim looks dark, even when Kennedy's cheek has grime, and even when you believe the coin would photograph better after polishing, leave it alone. Experienced buyers would rather evaluate an original circulated coin than a coin that has been scrubbed in an attempt to make it look new. Once the coin appears genuinely unusual, you can consider professional authentication. PCGS and NGC are two major grading services used by collectors. They can evaluate authenticity, condition, and certain recognized varieties. That plastic holder is not what creates rarity, but professional certification can make it much easier for another collector to understand exactly what is being offered. Selling also requires patience. If you have only a normal circulated $50, a local coin dealer may be the easiest place to receive an offer. If the coin has an important double die, an unusually high grade, or another major error, a specialist auction may make more sense because it puts the piece in front of collectors who understand that specific market. Do not judge value from an unsold online listing where someone asks $20,000, $50,000, or even more. Anybody can choose an asking price. The better question is whether similar certified coins have actually sold, what grades they received, and whether the exact variety matches your piece. That simple habit can protect collectors from one of the biggest problems in modern coin hunting, believing that every old coin is a jackpot because someone posted an enormous price online. The real excitement of the 1967 Kennedy $50 is stronger than that. You do not need an unrealistic claim to make this coin fascinating. You already have a piece containing 40% silver, carrying one of the most emotionally important portraits in modern American coinage, produced during a unique no-mint mark period, and known with several collectible double-die varieties. Then, at the highest end of preservation, the collector market shows that exceptional examples can reach into the thousands, with NGC showing values as high as $5,250 for pristine uncirculated pieces. That combination is exactly why this coin deserves a second look. The circulated example in front of us may have cheek scratches and dark rim tunning, but those features are part of its history. They tell us this $50 did not spend its whole life protected inside a collector's case. It moved through the real world, passed from person to person, and somehow survived long enough to be examined again today. And somewhere else, perhaps inside an old family collection, a bank box, or a group of Kennedy $50 saved decades ago, another 1967 coin may be waiting with a detail its owner has never noticed. Maybe it is an ordinary circulated $50. Maybe it carries one of the known double-die varieties. Maybe it survived in an unusually high grade. You cannot know until you look. That little moment when an old coin turns under the light and something suddenly catches your eye is one of the reasons collectors never get tired of this hobby. A 50-cent piece becomes a mystery, the mystery becomes research, and sometimes the research reveals a coin that deserves far more attention than anyone expected. But the next coin is where things get even more interesting. This next coin feels different the moment you see it, because instead of carrying a normal year like 1975 or 1976, the front shows something much more dramatic, 1776 to 1976. That dual date immediately tells you this is a Bicentennial Kennedy $50, a coin created to celebrate 200 years since the Declaration of Independence. The example we are looking at carries a D mint mark, which means it was struck at the Denver Mint, and it is only lightly circulated, so much of the original design is still easy to enjoy. At first glance, it may seem like a common commemorative coin that millions of Americans saved, but this issue has a history, design, and high-grade market story that can make collectors pay very close attention. The Bicentennial coin program was not created as a small collector project. It was designed as a national celebration. Congress authorized special designs for the quarter, half dollar, and dollar, and the United States Mint invited artists to compete for the new reverse images. The quarter received the famous colonial drummer, the Eisenhower dollar received the Liberty Bell over the moon, and the Kennedy half dollar received a completely new view of Independence Hall. The United States Mint began releasing the Bicentennial Kennedy half dollar to the public in July 1975, even though the coin carried the dual date 1776 to 1976. Because of this program, no circulating Kennedy half dollars dated simply 1975 were produced. United States Mint. That little historical detail makes this coin much more interesting. Imagine being an American collector in 1975 and seeing one for the first time. You already knew the Kennedy portrait, but when you turned the coin over, the familiar presidential seal eagle was gone. In its place stood Independence Hall, one of the most important buildings in American history. People were not simply receiving another half dollar. They were receiving a circulating tribute to the nation's 200th birthday. The reverse design was created by Seth G. Huntington, whose winning artwork shows Independence Hall in Philadelphia. This was the building connected with some of the most important events of the Revolutionary period, including the signing of the Declaration of Independence. The design also includes half-dollar United States of America and the national motto EPLUBUS UNUM. PCGS notes that Huntington's design was selected from a large national competition, giving this coin a very different background from an ordinary annual issue. PCGS. Now turn the coin back to the front. President Kennedy still faces left in Gilroy Roberts' familiar portrait, but beneath him sits that unforgettable date, 1776 to 1976. For many collectors, that dual date is the feature that makes the coin instantly recognizable. You do not need to be an expert to know you are looking at something connected to the bicentennial celebration. Just below Kennedy's neck area, the small D mint mark identifies the Denver Mint. This detail matters because Denver produced its own large group of bicentennial half dollars. PCGS lists a mintage of 287,565,248 pieces for the 1976 D-clad business strike, so an ordinary example is not rare simply because it carries the D in fact. These were produced in enormous numbers so Americans across the country could actually use and save them. PCGS. That high mintage creates a very interesting collecting situation. At first, it sounds like bad news. If nearly 288 million were made, how could one possibly become valuable? The answer is that collectors do not always pay for the date alone. At the higher levels of the hobby, they may pay for condition rarity. In other words, a coin can be common overall, but surprisingly difficult to find with almost perfect surfaces, a strong strike, very little contact marking, and excellent eye appeal. This is where the lightly circulated condition of our example becomes important. A lightly used bicentennial half dollar may still show most of Kennedy's hair detail, strong lettering, and clear architectural lines on Independence Hall. Small marks can appear across Kennedy's cheek or the open fields, and the highest points of the reverse may begin showing light wear. Those details help separate a circulated coin from a true mint state example. If this coin spent only a short time in circulation, you may still notice traces of its original luster when you tilt it under a light. The surface can seem to move or glow as the light passes across it. Once real circulation wear begins, that luster breaks across the high points. Experienced collectors pay close attention to this because a coin that looks almost new to a beginner may still fall into a very different grade once a professional examines the surfaces. The standard 1976 D coin is also important for another reason. It is not the 40% silver version. The Denver business strikes were made from copper-nickel-clad material over a pure copper center. PCGS gives the weight as about 11.3 grams and the diameter as roughly 31 millimeters. The special 40% silver bicentennial half dollars came from San Francisco, not Denver. So if someone tells you every 1776 to 1976 Kennedy half dollar is silver, That is incorrect. Look at the edge of a normal Denver example, and you can often see the copper-colored center between the outer layers. That is one quick clue that you are dealing with the ordinary copper-nickel clad composition rather than the special silver collector issue. Of course, weight and professional testing are much more reliable than judging only by color, because toning and lighting can sometimes make an edge look different. Now this is where many bicentennial coin videos become confusing. Someone finds a normal 1976 D half-dollar, sees the unusual reverse, searches online, and then discovers listings asking thousands or even millions of dollars. Suddenly the coin feels like a jackpot, but an asking price is not the same thing as an actual sale. The real market becomes much clearer when we look at certified auction records. Before we reach that number, though, there is another part of the story worth exploring: errors. Because hundreds of millions of these coins were struck, collectors continue searching for examples that did not leave the mint in the normal way. A genuine off-center strike can occur when the planchet is not properly centered between the dies. Part of the design may be missing, while a blank area remains visible. The more dramatic the offset, while still showing enough of the date and design to identify the coin, the more attention an error specialist may give it. A clipped planchet is another possibility. Before striking, round coin blanks are cut from large strips of metal. If the cutting process overlaps an area already punched out, the blank can be missing a curved section. A genuine clip has certain characteristics around the rim that help specialists separate it from a coin someone simply damaged later. Then there are struck-through errors, where grease, debris, or another object interferes during the strike and prevents part of the design from forming normally. Some are minor. Others can create a dramatic missing or weak area that immediately stands out. Collectors may also find broad strikes, unusual die cracks, and other production problems. PCGS even records an unusual 1976 D Bicentennial half-mated error pair that sold for $4,406 at Heritage Auctions in 2013. That is a genuine example of how a major mint error can create a completely different market from the ordinary circulation coin. Notice the difference in that story. The coin did not become valuable because someone scratched it, because the rim became dark, or because Independence Hall looked unusual after years of circulation. The value came from a real production error that could be studied and authenticated. That distinction is one of the most important lessons in error collecting. Damage happens after the coin is made. Mint errors happen while the coin is being produced. If you see a deep cut across Kennedy's face, that is probably damage. If the edge looks smashed in one spot, it may simply have been hit. If the surface is dark, dirty, or spotted, that usually reflects storage or environmental exposure. None of those things should be called rare errors without evidence. A true error normally has physical clues that match the minting process. That is why comparison matters so much. Before getting excited about a strange feature, look at several normal 1976 D halves. Learn how Independence Hall should look. Study the lettering. Examine the mint mark. Once the normal coin becomes familiar, unusual characteristics become easier to judge. This bicentennial reverse can sometimes fool beginners because the building contains many straight lines, windows, and architectural details. A weak strike or circulation wear can make part of Independence Hall appear different from another coin. That does not necessarily mean you have a new variety. Two coins can show slightly different details simply because one was struck more strongly or survived in better condition. The same is true around Kennedy's portrait. Large open areas on the obverse make contact marks easy to see. $half are big coins, and when they fall against each other in bags, rolls, or counting equipment, the surfaces can pick up marks very quickly. A coin that never truly circulated can still have bag marks from contact at the mint or during transportation. That is why high-grade bicentennial halves become so interesting. Millions were saved, but very clean pieces with strong overall eye appeal are much harder to find than the huge mintage suggests. PCGS population information shows that far fewer certified coins survive at the very top grades than in the more common mint state levels. Once collectors begin competing for the best examples, the market can change dramatically. Think about how that happens. A normal collector may be happy with a nice 1976 D half-dollar showing clean details and good luster. An advanced registry set collector may want something different. That person may already own a beautiful MS-66 and now wants one of the finest graded examples available. If only a small group of coins meets that standard, several wealthy collectors may end up chasing the same piece. That is not the same kind of rarity as a low mintage coin, but the competition can still become intense. And this is where our story begins moving toward the value reveal. For years, most people treated bicentennial half-dollars as souvenirs. Families placed them in drawers. Grandparents saved them for grandchildren. Some were kept in envelopes with newspaper clippings from the bicentennial celebration. Others were dropped into jars simply because the 1776 to 1976 date looked special. That widespread saving is one reason circulated examples remain easy to locate. PCGS recently described bicentennial half-dollars as common in circulation and noted that the clad issues remain frequently encountered by collectors searching rolls. But at the same time, the very finest pieces have created a completely different story. Imagine a collector opening an old mint set that has remained untouched for decades. Most of the coins show normal small contact marks. Then the Kennedy half-dollar catches the light. Kennedy's cheek looks unusually clean. The open field seems almost untouched. Independence Hall is sharply struck, and the original luster remains strong from edge to edge. The collector does not know the grade yet, but the coin feels different. It goes into a protective holder. It is examined again under better lighting. Then it is submitted for professional grading. Weeks later, the result arrives, and suddenly a bicentennial coin that millions of Americans remember saving becomes something much harder to find. This is the part of coin collecting that people outside the hobby sometimes struggle to understand. How can two coins with exactly the same date and mint mark sell for completely different amounts? Because the market is not paying only for the date. It is paying for the whole package: preservation, rarity at that grade, strike, eye appeal, certification, and demand at the moment of sale. Now we can finally reveal the strongest verified number for the regular 1976 D clad Kennedy half-dollar. According to PCGS auction records, a 1976 D Kennedy half-dollar graded MS-66 by NGC sold for $8,400 at Heritage Auctions on August 18, 2024. That is the current auction record displayed by PCGS for the regular strike 1976 D clad issue, PCGS. Think about how remarkable that is. The coin itself carried a face value of only 50 cents, and hundreds of millions were struck, yet an exceptional certified example reached $8,400 because collectors viewed its quality and rarity very differently from the lightly circulated pieces found in ordinary collections. That is the real wow factor of this coin. You do not need to claim that every bicentennial half-dollar is worth a fortune. The true story is already fascinating. A heavily produced commemorative coin, saved by millions of Americans, can still create an $8,400 auction result when one exceptional piece reaches the right combination of grade and collector demand. And the errors add another layer. A dramatic authenticated production mistake can attract thousands even when the normal coin is common. That means there are really two searches happening at the same time. Some collectors search for the finest condition. Others search for the strangest genuine mint error. Both require patience. Both require knowledge. And both begin with taking a closer look. Now suppose the bicentennial half-dollar in your collection is only lightly circulated. Like the coin we are discussing, you should not expect $8,400 simply because the date and mint mark match the auction record. That high price belonged to an exceptional certified coin, but you should still examine your piece carefully because its condition, unusual features, and history may make it worth preserving. Start by looking at the coin under soft, direct light. Tilt it slowly rather than rubbing the surface. Check Kennedy's cheek and hair for wear. Look at the open field in front of his face. Turn the coin over and inspect the fine lines of Independence Hall. Examine the rim and edge for anything that looks as though it may have happened during production. Then check the D mint mark. Make sure it is present and looks natural. A normal Denver strike should carry that mint mark, and removing or altering one later does not create a genuine rarity. Never assume something is special simply because a letter looks weak. Wear, damage, or a weak strike can change the way small design elements appear. If you see something truly unusual, take clear photographs before doing anything else. Photograph both full sides, the edge, and close-ups of the suspicious area. Good images make it much easier to compare the coin with known errors and to ask an experienced dealer for an opinion. And do not clean it. This matters especially with bicentennial coins because so many people saved them as souvenirs and later tried to make them look new again. A polishing cloth can create thousands of microscopic scratches. Chemical dips can change the surface. Baking soda can produce an unnatural shine. Once that original surface is damaged, serious collectors can often see the evidence immediately. The safest cleaning method for a potentially collectible coin is no cleaning at all. Protect the piece in a non-PVC holder and let an expert decide whether any professional conservation is appropriate. Conservation and home cleaning are not the same thing. Professional services use controlled methods for specific surface problems, while home polishing can permanently reduce collector appeal. If your coin appears to be an important error or unusually high-grade example, professional grading through PCGS or NGC may make sense. The grading fee should be weighed against the expected value, so submitting every bicentennial $half you own is usually unnecessary. But when a coin truly appears exceptional, certification can make selling much easier. Then comes the question many viewers care about most: where should you sell it? For ordinary examples, a local coin dealer may be the easiest option. For a certified high-grade piece, compare recent auction results first. Major numismatic auction houses can be useful when a coin is rare enough to attract national collector interest. A genuine major error may do especially well in an error coin auction because the bidders already understand what they are looking at. The biggest mistake is accepting a price before knowing exactly what you own. The second biggest mistake is believing a huge asking price online without checking completed sales. A seller may list a normal bicentennial $half for $50,000, but that does not mean anyone paid that amount. Verified auction results from established numismatic companies give you a much stronger idea of what serious buyers have actually spent. And that brings us back to the $8,400 record. It matters because it is not simply an imaginary asking price. It is an auction result tied to a graded coin and a documented sale, PCGS. That kind of record changes the way collectors think about these coins. A child may have received one in 1976 and placed it in a drawer. A parent may have saved a roll from the bank. A grandparent may have tucked a few bicentennial coins into an envelope because the dates looked historic. 50 years later, those same coins are still being rediscovered. Most will be common. Some will be attractive. A few may be unusually well preserved. And an even smaller number may carry genuine mint errors that make collectors stop immediately. That possibility is where the emotion of collecting really comes from. The bicentennial Kennedy $half is more than a piece of copper and nickel. It represents a national celebration that millions of Americans remember personally. It carries Kennedy's portrait on one side and Independence Hall on the other, connecting two very different periods of American history on the same coin. For an older viewer who remembers 1976, the coin can bring back memories of flags hanging from houses, bicentennial celebrations, special television programs, parades, school events, and patriotic displays across the country. For a younger collector, it is a physical connection to that moment. And that emotional connection helps keep demand alive. Coins are unusual collectibles because they combine history with the possibility of discovery. You can hold the same type of object someone spent in a grocery store 50 years ago, then turn it under a light and discover something about its strike that changes the entire conversation. That does not happen every day, but it happens often enough to keep people searching. So when you find a 1776 to 1976 D. Kennedy $50, do not look only at the dual date. Check the condition, check the strike, look at Independence Hall, study the mint mark, examine the edge, learn whether the strange feature you see is normal wear, damage, or something that truly happened at the mint. If the coin is ordinary, you still own a memorable bicentennial collectible. If it is unusually well preserved, the story becomes more interesting. If it carries a dramatic, authenticated error, the story can change completely. And when you remember that a regular 1976 D-clad example has already reached a verified auction record of $8,400, while a documented mated error pair sold for more than $4,400, it becomes easy to understand why serious collectors continue searching these coins, even though hundreds of millions were originally produced. That is the strange beauty of the Bicentennial Kennedy $50. Common enough that almost everyone has seen one, historic enough that millions of people saved one, yet still capable of producing individual examples that surprise the collector market decades later. And somewhere right now, another exceptional example may be resting inside an old mint set, a family collection, or a roll of $50 that nobody has opened in years. The owner may see 50 cents. A collector may see the bicentennial. But the right expert, looking at the right coin, may see something much more important. And that is why we are not finished yet, because the final Kennedy $50 in today's video comes from a much later year, looks far less historic at first glance, and has spent years in heavy circulation. Yet that ordinary appearance is exactly what makes its story so surprising. And this final coin might surprise you the most. And now we come to the final coin, and this is where the story becomes especially interesting, because the 1993 D. Kennedy $50 does not look like the kind of coin most people would expect to become valuable. It is not made from silver like the early Kennedy $50. It does not carry the famous 1776 to 1976 bicentennial date, and it does not have a special reverse design. In fact, the example we are looking at is heavily circulated, with clear wear across Kennedy's portrait, small marks in the open fields, and much of the original shine already gone. To most people, it would look like nothing more than an old 50-cent coin, but to a serious collector, this kind of ordinary appearance can sometimes hide a much more interesting story. The year 1993 came almost 30 years after the Kennedy $50 first entered circulation, and by that time, the series had already gone through several important changes. The original 1964 $50 was made with 90% silver. The coins from 1965 through 1970 used 40% silver, and then the regular circulation pieces changed to the copper-nickel clad composition used for modern $50. By 1993, the Kennedy $50 was no longer a new design, but it still carried one of the most famous portraits in American coinage. Millions of people recognized Kennedy's face immediately, yet far fewer people paid attention to the date, mint mark, condition, or small production details that collectors study today. This coin was struck at the Denver Mint, and the small D mint mark near Kennedy's neck tells us exactly where it was produced. That little letter may not seem important at first, but mint marks matter because collectors use them to separate coins from different production facilities. Two $50 from the same year can look almost identical, yet one may come from Philadelphia and the other from Denver. In some cases, certain errors or unusual varieties may be connected more closely with one mint than another. so experienced collectors always begin by checking that tiny mint mark before they study the rest of the coin. The design itself remained the classic Kennedy half-dollar design that collectors had known for decades. On the front, President John F. Kennedy faces left in the portrait created by Gilroy Roberts. Liberty curves around the upper part of the coin. In God W.E. Trust appears below Kennedy's portrait, and the date 1993 sits along the bottom. On the reverse, Frank Gasparo's detailed eagle design remains in place, based on the presidential seal. The eagle holds an olive branch and arrows, while a ring of stars surrounds the central design. Even after years of circulation, the reverse still looks impressive because there are so many small details packed into the design. The example we are discussing has been heavily circulated, and that condition tells its own story. Kennedy's cheek may show scratches and contact marks, while the hair above his ear can become softer after years of use. The open fields around the portrait can show many small marks, and the reverse may have weaker detail on the eagle's feathers and shield. These signs of wear are normal for a coin that spent a long time moving through everyday commerce, and they should not be confused with genuine mint errors. This difference is extremely important because one of the biggest mistakes new collectors make is calling ordinary damage a rare production error. The scratch that cuts down into Kennedy's cheek was probably created after the coin left the mint. A dent on the rim may have happened when the half-dollar was dropped or hit against another hard object. A dark area on the surface may come from years of storage, moisture, or environmental exposure. None of those things automatically make the coin rare. A real mint error, however, was created during the production process, and those errors often show very different physical signs. For example, an off-center strike happens when the blank coin is not positioned correctly between the dies. Part of the design may be missing, while part of the blank planchet remains visible. A clipped planchet happens even earlier, when the round metal blank is cut incorrectly from the strip of metal before striking. A struck-through error can appear when grease, debris, or another material gets between the die and the coin during production, leaving part of the design weak or missing. Die cracks, broad strikes, and other production mistakes can also attract attention, especially when the error is strong enough to be easy to identify. This is where a heavily circulated 1993 D can become much more interesting than it first appears. Circulation can add wear, scratches, and marks, but it does not erase a genuine mint error that was already part of the coin when it left Denver. That means a worn coin can still deserve serious attention if something about the strike, edge, or design looks unusual. The key is learning how to separate normal wear from features that were created during minting. Imagine someone sorting through a group of half-dollars that had been sitting in an old family drawer for 20 years. Most of the coins look similar, and the older silver pieces are the first ones to catch attention. Then a worn 1993 D appears. At first, it seems too modern to matter, but something around the rim looks unusual. The person compares it with another 1993 D and notices that the shape is different. Instead of spending it, they set it aside, take better photographs, and begin researching genuine error examples. That simple decision to look closer is often where the most exciting collecting stories begin. There is another reason collectors study modern Kennedy half-dollars so carefully, and that reason is condition rarity. A coin may be common overall, but surprisingly difficult to find in truly exceptional condition. This happens because large half-dollars can receive marks very easily, even before they enter circulation. Newly struck coins can hit one another in bags, bins, or counting equipment, leaving contact marks across the surface. Kennedy's cheek is especially important because it is large and open, making every mark easier to see. Now imagine two 1993 D Kennedy half-dollars placed side by side. The first coin has been heavily circulated for decades, with smooth high points and scratches across the fields. The second coin was carefully preserved from the beginning, still showing strong original luster, sharp details, and only a few tiny marks. Both coins share the same date and mint mark, but advanced collectors may view them very differently. One is an ordinary circulation survivor, while the other may be rare at a very high grade. This is why grading can make such a dramatic difference. Professional grading services examine the coin's surface quality, strike strength, luster, eye appeal, and the location of marks. A coin that looks almost perfect to the average person may still fall short of the highest mint state grades because of a few marks on Kennedy's cheek or in the open field. At the top end of the grading scale, tiny differences become extremely important, and that is where serious competition between collectors can begin. The fascinating part is that modern coins are often ignored precisely because people assume they are too new to matter. Many collectors search immediately for older silver dates, famous eras, or coins from the 1800s, while modern clad pieces remain untouched. That creates a different kind of opportunity. When everyone assumes a coin is common, fewer people may take the time to study the best examples closely. That does not mean every 1993 half dollar is valuable. Most circulated examples are ordinary coins, and even many uncirculated pieces are not especially rare. The excitement comes when a coin combines something unusual with strong collector demand, such as an important mint era, an unusually high certified grade, or a very clean example that stands above the typical coins found in rolls and collections. And before value even enters the conversation, there is one mistake that can destroy much of that collector interest. Do not clean the coin. A heavily circulated half dollar may look dull, dirty, or dark, and the natural reaction may be to polish it. That can do more harm than good. A cloth can create fine hairline scratches, chemicals can change the surface, and polishing can remove the original texture that collectors want to examine. Once that surface has been changed, the damage cannot be undone. If you believe a 1993 half dollar may be special, handle it only by the edge and place it inside a clean coin-safe holder. Use good lighting and magnification to examine the date, mint mark, rim, edge, and both sides of the design. If something still appears unusual after careful comparison with normal examples, then a professional opinion may be worth considering. PCGS and NGC are widely used grading services, and for an important era or an unusually high-grade coin, certification can help establish exactly what you have. Selling should also come only after identification. A normal circulated half dollar may be easy to sell through a local coin dealer, but an important certified era or an exceptional high-grade example may attract stronger interest through a major numismatic auction. Serious collectors want clear photographs, proper identification, and reliable grading information. The more unusual the coin, the more important it becomes to understand what makes it special before accepting an offer. This is also where online price claims can become dangerous. Someone may list a normal 1993 Kennedy half dollar for $20,000, $50,000, or even more, but an asking price does not prove that another collector has actually paid that amount. Serious sellers look at completed sales, certified auction results, and comparable examples. That information gives a much more realistic picture of collector demand. Now the suspense begins to build, because the 1993 does not have the obvious attraction of the earlier coins we discussed. The 1965 half dollar carries silver and represents a major change in composition. The 1967 also contains silver and comes from the unusual no mint mark period. The Bicentennial half dollar immediately stands out because of its dual date and Independence Hall reverse. The 1993 has none of those obvious features. It looks ordinary, and that is exactly why it can be overlooked. Picture a collector searching through a group of Kennedy half dollars. The silver coins are pulled out first. The bicentennial pieces go into another pile. The later clad coins remain at the bottom because they seem less interesting. Then one 1993 catches the light differently. The surfaces appear unusually clean. Kennedy's cheek has very few marks, and the reverse looks sharply struck. The collector stops and looks again. Something about the coin feels different. It is placed in a holder. It is compared with several normal examples. The collector checks the surfaces under stronger lighting. Then the coin is sent for professional grading. That moment of waiting can be exciting because the collector does not yet know whether the coin is simply nice or truly exceptional. When the result comes back, the entire story can change. A modern half dollar that seemed completely ordinary may suddenly become one of the finest known examples of the date, or an unusual mint era may receive professional confirmation. That is when collector demand can rise sharply. At the highest levels, exceptional 1993 D. Kennedy half dollars with the right combination of grade, rarity, certification, or dramatic mint error can move into the thousands of dollars, and the strongest special examples can push into the $10,000 range or even higher, depending on exactly what makes the coin rare and how strongly collectors compete for it. That number becomes much more surprising when you remember what we are talking about. This is not an early silver half dollar. It is not a famous bicentennial issue. It is a modern-looking coin that originally entered circulation with a face value of only 50 cents. Yet under the right circumstances, one exceptional example can attract bids measured in thousands of dollars. And that is the true wow factor of this final coin. The value does not come from the date alone. It comes from finding the unusual coin among all the ordinary ones. It may be the rare error that survived years of circulation, or the nearly perfect mint state piece that escaped the contact marks seen on most examples. The difference can be tiny to the average eye, but enormous to a specialist. That possibility is what keeps collectors searching. Somewhere right now, a 1993 D half dollar may be resting in a bankroll, an inherited collection, an old desk drawer, or a jar of forgotten coins. Most of those pieces will be completely normal, but every collector understands that the next unusual example has to be somewhere. And when someone finally finds it, the excitement is not only about the money. It is the moment when an ordinary coin becomes a discovery. You begin by noticing something small, then you research it, compare it, protect it, and finally learn that the feature you almost ignored actually matters. That feeling is one of the reasons people remain in this hobby for decades. Before we finish, remember the most important lesson from all 4 Kennedy half dollars we explored today. A valuable coin is not created by scratches, dark color, or an unusual-looking surface alone. Genuine rarity comes from important varieties, real mint errors, exceptional preservation, precious metal content, and collector demand. Learning that difference protects you from unrealistic claims and helps you recognize the coins that truly deserve attention. Never clean a coin that may be collectible. Keep important pieces dry and protected in proper holders, handle them by the edges, and use good lighting when examining the surfaces. If you believe you have discovered a major error or exceptional coin, professional grading through PCGS or NGC can help confirm exactly what you own. And before selling, compare completed auction results and speak with trusted dealers so you understand the market before accepting an offer. Today on Mint Vault USA, we began with the historic 1965 Kennedy half dollar and its 40% silver composition. We moved into 1967, another silver issue from the unusual no mint mark period. Then we explored the famous 1776 1976 D Bicentennial Kennedy half dollar with Independence Hall on the reverse and a design created for America's 200th birthday. Finally, we arrived at this heavily circulated 1993 D, a coin that looks far more ordinary but teaches one of the most important lessons in modern collecting. Never assume a newer coin has nothing interesting to offer. The next time you find an old Kennedy half dollar, take a few extra seconds before spending it. Check the year, study the mint mark, examine the edge, and look carefully at the strike. Most examples will simply be honest pieces of American history, but every once in a while, one coin carries something different, and that one detail can completely change the story. Thank you for watching Mint Vault USA, where we search for rare coins, valuable errors, hidden treasures, and the stories behind the money people overlook every day. If you enjoy discovering what may be hiding in old collections and pocket change, subscribe to the channel and stay with us for more coin hunting stories, collector tips, and valuable discoveries. And remember, one of these coins could be hiding in your home right now.